The escape pod drifted through the empty darkness of space. Inside, Jinwoo Park lay unconscious, his breathing shallow and weak. His uniform was torn and stained with dried blood. The pod systems beeped softly, running on emergency power that would not last much longer. 3 weeks had passed since the attack on the UES Hanseong. Jinwoo was the only survivor from a crew of 200. The memory of that terrible day haunted his dreams. Strange ships had appeared without warning, firing weapons that tore through their shields like paper. The captain had ordered all hands to abandon ship. But most escape pods never made it out. Now Jinwoo floated alone in the vast emptiness between stars. His pod's distress beacon had gone silent days ago. Food and water were almost gone. He had given up hope of rescue. A soft vibration shook the pod. Jinwoo's eyes opened slowly. Through the small window, he saw lights approaching. His heart raced. Were they the same aliens who had destroyed his ship? He tried to reach for the emergency controls, but his body was too weak to move. The pod shuddered as something grabbed it. Metal clanged against metal. Jinwoo heard strange sounds from outside, like music mixed with whispers. Then came a hissing noise as the pod's outer hatch was opened. Light flooded in, blinding him. When his eyes adjusted, Jinwoo saw the most beautiful and terrifying sight of his life. A tall figure stood in the doorway, but it was not human. The being was over 7 feet tall and seemed to be made of living crystal. Its body glowed with soft blue light, and its face had features that looked almost human but were too perfect, too symmetrical. The crystal being spoke in a voice like wind. Chimes. "Zayla, this creature appears to be alive. Should we bring it aboard?" Another voice answered from somewhere Jinwoo could not see. "Captain Ilthan, our protocols say we should not interfere with unknown species. It could be dangerous." "Look at it," said the first voice, which belonged to Captain Ilthan. "It is clearly injured and dying. We cannot simply leave it here." A third voice joined the conversation. This one sounded younger and more emotional. "I agree with the captain. My medical scans show the creature is intelligent and suffering. We have to help." "Very well, Zila," Captain Ilthan said. "Bring it to the medical bay, but maintain full quarantine protocols." Gentle hands lifted Jinwoo from his pod. The crystal beings moved with fluid grace, carrying him through corridors that glowed with the same soft light as their bodies. Everything around him seemed to pulse with life and energy. The walls were smooth and curved, more like the inside of a living thing than a metal ship. Jinwoo tried to speak, but only weak sounds came out. One of the beings, the young one called Zayla, leaned closer. She had a kind face, though her eyes were completely white like polished stones. "Do not try to talk," she said gently. "You are very sick. We will help you get better." They placed him on a bed that felt warm and soft. Machines that looked more like plants than technology surrounded him. Thin tendrils touched his skin, and immediately he felt strength flowing back into his body. The pain in his chest faded and his breathing became easier. Days passed in a blur of recovery. The crystal beings, who called themselves Villani, took care of him with gentle efficiency. Zayla stayed by his side most of the time, monitoring his healing process. She spoke to him in their musical language, even though he could not understand the words. Slowly, Jinwoo learned to communicate. The Villani had devices that could translate thoughts into images and simple concepts. Through this method, he told them about the attack on his ship and the destruction of his crew. Captain Ilthan visited him often. The Villani leader was old, with deeper blue light in his crystal skin and eyes that held great sadness. When Jinwoo described the ships that had attacked him, Ilthan's glow dimmed noticeably. "Korthak," the captain whispered. "You have encountered the Korthak Empire." Through the translation device, Jinwoo learned the horrible truth. The Korthak were a race of brutal conquerors who swept through space, destroying or enslaving every other species they found. They were powerful warriors with advanced weapons and no mercy in their hearts. "They destroyed our homeworld 6 months ago," Ilthan explained. "We are all that remains of our people. 3,000 souls on this ship, running and hiding. Jinwoo felt sick, but not from his injuries. Why don't you fight back? Your technology is incredible. You could defend yourselves. Ilton's light grew even dimmer. We are not warriors. Our people chose the path of peace long ago. We do not know how to fight, and we do not wish to learn. But they're killing you, Jinwoo said. They're wiping out your entire species. Yes, Ilton replied sadly. Perhaps that is our fate. Zayla spoke up from beside the bed. Not all of us agree with that, Captain. Some of us think we must learn to defend ourselves. And what would that make us? Ilton asked. If we become killers like the Korthak, how are we different from them? Jinwoo struggled to sit up. His body was much stronger now, healed by Villani medicine. You're different because you don't want to hurt anyone. The Korthak enjoy causing pain. You would only fight to protect innocent lives. But Ilton shook his head. Violence corrupts all who practice it. Better to die with clean souls than live as monsters. Over the following days, Jinwoo explored more of the ship. The bright current was beautiful beyond imagination. Gardens grew in transparent domes, filled with plants that glowed like stars. The Villani moved through their ship like dancers, each one graceful and kind. But Jinwoo also saw the fear in their eyes. They jumped at sudden sounds. They spoke in whispers about the Korthak hunters who pursued them. Parents held their children close and told them stories about their lost homeworld. These people were dying, and they were choosing to die rather than fight. Jinwoo could not understand it, but he began to respect their courage. It took a different kind of bravery to face extinction with such dignity. Still, something inside him rebelled against their passive acceptance. Humans had survived because they fought back against threats. They adapted, they struggled, they refused to give up. Maybe that made them less pure than the Villani, but it also kept them alive. Jinwoo made a decision. He would convince these peaceful beings that sometimes fighting was the only way to preserve what was worth protecting. The Korthak had taken everything from both their species. It was time to take something back. Jinwoo walked through the observation deck of the bright current, watching stars drift past the transparent walls. 2 weeks had passed since his rescue, and he was now strong enough to move freely around the ship. The Villani had given him quarters near the medical bay, and many of them had grown comfortable with his presence. Zayla found him there, her crystal form glowing softly in the starlight. She had become his closest friend among the Villani, patient enough to answer his endless questions about their culture and technology. You seem troubled, she said, settling beside him with that fluid grace all Villani possessed. I've been thinking about what Captain Ilton told me, Jinwoo replied. About your people being the last survivors. It doesn't make sense. What doesn't make sense? Jinwoo gestured toward the ship around them. You have shields that can stop any weapon I've ever seen. Your engines are faster than anything humans have built. Your medical technology brought me back from the edge of death. How can the Korthak be winning? Zayla's light dimmed, the way it always did when she felt sad. Technology cannot save us if we refuse to use it for war. Our shields are meant to protect, not to fight. Our ships are designed to explore, not to attack. But you could modify them, Jinwoo insisted. You could turn your exploration tools into weapons. We could, Zayla admitted. But we will not. To do so would make us no better than the Korthak. Their conversation was interrupted by alarms echoing through the ship. The lights shifted from soft blue to harsh red, and Jinwoo heard Captain Ilton's voice over the communication system. All crew to emergency stations. Korthak ships have found us. Jinwoo and Zayla rushed to the bridge. Through the main screen, they could see 3 dark ships approaching. The Korthak vessels looked like metal spiders, all sharp angles and weapon ports. They moved with predatory grace, spreading out to surround the bright current. Captain Ilton stood at the center of the bridge, his normally calm expression tight with worry. Prepare for emergency jump to hyperspace, he ordered. Jump drive is still charging from our last escape, reported the navigation officer. We need 10 more minutes. We don't have 10 minutes, Ilton replied grimly. The first Korthak ship opened fire. Crimson energy beams struck the bright current's shields, causing the entire ship to shudder. The Volani crew worked frantically at their stations, but they moved with the careful precision of scientists, not the urgent efficiency of warriors. "Why aren't you shooting back?" Jinwoo demanded. "We have no weapons," Ilton answered, without looking away from the screen. "Only defensive systems." Another barrage hit the shields. This time, sparks flew from several control panels as the protective barrier weakened. Through the transparency of the Volani bridge, Jinwoo could see the fear on every face. "Give me access to your defensive systems," Jinwoo said suddenly. "What?" Ilton turned to stare at him. "Your shield generators, your sensor arrays, anything that produces energy, I might be able to modify them." "That's impossible. You don't understand our technology." "Maybe not completely, but I understand the principles. Energy is energy, whether it's used to protect or to attack." Captain Ilton hesitated. The ship shook again as more weapons fire struck them. "Very well. Zayla, take him to the engineering section." They ran through corridors filled with frightened Volani civilians. Parents clutched their children while elders spoke quiet prayers. Jinwoo saw families holding each other, accepting their fate with the same peaceful dignity that both inspired and frustrated him. The engineering section was a marvel of crystal technology. Geometric patterns of living light pulsed through transparent conduits, channeling power throughout the ship. Zayla led him to the main shield generator, a pillar of pure energy that hummed with barely contained force. "This is the primary defensive matrix," she explained. "It creates a barrier around the ship that absorbs incoming energy." Jinwoo studied the system, his mind racing. Human technology was crude compared to this, but the basic physics were the same. Energy could be redirected, focused, weaponized. "I need to reverse the polarity of this coupling," he said, reaching for a crystalline component. "Instead of absorbing energy, it will project it outward." "That could destroy the entire system," Zayla warned. "Better to try and fail than to die without fighting." Another impact shook the ship. Through the engineering section's viewing port, Jinwoo could see the Korthak vessels closing in. One of them was much larger than the others, bristling with weapons and armored plates. Working with desperate speed, Jinwoo began modifying the shield generator. His human hands were clumsy compared to Volani precision, but his knowledge of weapons, technology guided him. He rerouted power conduits, altered frequency patterns, and prayed that his improvised changes would work. "Shields down to 30%, came Captain Ilton's voice over the communication system. "Prepare for boarding parties." "Not today," Jinwoo muttered, making final adjustments to the modified system. "Zayla, tell your captain to aim the ship at the largest Korthak vessel and activate the shields." "But we can't ram them with our shields down. Trust me." Zayla relayed the message. On the bridge, Captain Ilton must have decided that anything was better than surrender, because the bright current suddenly changed course and accelerated toward the enemy flagship. The Korthak ships increased their fire, sensing an easy victory. Their weapons hammered the Volani vessel, expecting to see it break apart at any moment. Instead, Jinwoo activated his modifications. The shield generator erupted outward, but instead of forming a protective barrier, it created a focused beam of pure energy. The improvised weapon struck the Korthak flagship like the fist of an angry god, punching through its armor and setting off secondary explosions throughout its hull. The enemy ship staggered, its weapons fire faltering. For the first time in Volani memory, a Korthak vessel had been hurt in battle. "Impossible," came Captain Ilton's voice filled with amazement. The other two Korthak ships hesitated, clearly confused by this unexpected development. In that moment of uncertainty, the bright current's jump drive finally charged to full power. "Get us out of here," Jinwoo said over the communication system. Space twisted around them as the ship leaped into hyperspace, leaving the damaged Korthak vessels behind. In the sudden silence that followed, Jinwoo could hear his own heartbeat, pounding in his ears. Zayla stared at him with wonder. "You hurt them. You actually made them retreat." "We hurt them," Jinwoo corrected. Your technology, my modifications, working together. Word of the successful defense spread quickly through the ship. Villani gathered in small groups, talking excitedly about what they had witnessed. For the first time since their homeworld's destruction, they had hope. But when Captain Ilthan arrived in the engineering section, his expression was troubled rather than joyful. "What you did today saved our lives," he said to Jinwoo, "but it has also changed us. Some of my people are asking why we don't modify more systems, why we don't hunt down the Korthak ships and destroy them." "Maybe they're asking the right questions," Jinwoo replied. "Or maybe they're starting down a path that will destroy everything good about our species." Ilton's light flickered with uncertainty. "We chose peace for a reason, human. Violence has a way of growing until it consumes everything." Jinwoo looked out at the stars rushing past. Somewhere out there, the Korthak Empire continued its campaign of destruction. How many other species were dying while the Villani debated the morality of self-defense? "Sometimes," he said quietly, "the only way to preserve peace is to fight for it." The debate had been going on for hours. Jinwoo sat in the center of the Villani council chamber, surrounded by crystal beings whose soft light flickered with emotion. Half of them glowed brighter when they spoke about fighting back against the Korthak. The other half grew dimmer, their voices filled with fear about losing their peaceful nature. "The humans showed us that we can defend ourselves," said Jorik, a young engineer whose light pulsed with excitement. "Why should we continue to run when we could stand and fight?" Elder Thalion's ancient form barely glowed at all. "Because fighting changes us. Look at the human. He speaks of violence as easily as breathing. Is that what we want to become?" Jinwoo had heard this argument many times over the past month. Ever since the encounter with the Korthak patrol, the Villani had been divided. Some wanted to learn combat techniques, while others insisted on maintaining their pacifist traditions. Captain Ilthan raised his hand for silence. "We have discussed this enough for today. The question remains, what do we do now? We cannot hide forever. The Korthak will find us again. I have a proposal," Jinwoo said, standing up. "Let me take you to human space. My people have experience fighting against overwhelming odds. They might be willing to help." The chamber fell silent. Many Villani had never considered the possibility of asking another species for aid. Their people had always been self-sufficient, exploring the galaxy alone and in peace. "Why would humans help us?" asked Zila, who had become Jinwoo's strongest supporter among the council. "What would they gain?" "My species believes in protecting the innocent," Jinwoo replied. "But more than that, the Korthak won't stop with your people. They're expanding in all directions. Eventually, they'll reach human space. It's better to stop them now, with allies, than face them alone later." Elder Thalion shook his head. "From what you've told us, humans are as violent as the Korthak. How do we know they won't simply conquer us themselves?" "Because you'll have something they need," Jinwoo said. "Your technology could revolutionize human civilization. Trade agreements, mutual defense pacts, cultural exchange. There are many ways our species could benefit each other." The debate continued for another hour before Captain Ilthan finally called for a vote. By a narrow margin, the council agreed to attempt the journey to human space. But Jinwoo could see the fear in many eyes. These people were risking everything, on the word of one human. The journey took 2 months. The Bright Current's advanced engines could travel faster than any human ship. But even so, the distance to Earth's territory was vast. During those long weeks, Jinwoo worked to prepare the Villani for what they would find. He taught basic human language to those who wanted to learn. He explained human customs, politics, and military structure. Most importantly, he tried to help them understand human psychology, how his people thought about war, peace, and survival. In return, Jinwoo learned more about Villani culture and technology. He discovered that their ship wasn't just a vessel, it was a living organism, grown rather than built. Their computers were biological constructs that thought in ways completely different from human machines. Their entire civilization was based on harmony between organic life and crystalline technology. "No wonder you don't like violence," he said. to Zayla one day as they watched crystal gardens growing in the ship's observation domes. "Everything about your culture is based on creation and growth." "Yes," she replied, "which is why this journey is so difficult for us. We're asking for help with destruction." They encountered another Korthak patrol 3 weeks into the journey. This time, 5 Villani volunteers joined Jinwoo in modifying the ship's systems for combat. Working together, they turned sensor arrays into targeting systems and shield generators into energy weapons. The battle was brief but brutal. The Korthak ships attacked with their usual confidence, expecting an easy victory. Instead, they found themselves facing coordinated fire from multiple directions. The Bright Current's modified weapons punched through their armor like it was paper. 2 Korthak vessels were destroyed outright. The third tried to escape, but Jorik had modified the engine systems to give the ship incredible speed. They caught the fleeing enemy and disabled its weapons before it could call for reinforcements. For the first time in their history, the Villani had captured a Korthak ship intact. The prisoners they found aboard were unlike anything Jinwoo had expected. The Korthak were massive creatures, each one over 8 feet tall and covered in thick, armored hide. Their faces were brutal and scarred, with teeth like knives and eyes that burned with hatred. But what shocked Jinwoo most was their reaction to capture. Instead of fear or anger, the Korthak prisoners seemed confused. They kept asking why the Villani hadn't simply killed them. "You defeated us in battle," their leader said through a translation device. "By the laws of war, our lives belong to you. Why do you hesitate?" Captain Ilthan stared at the massive warrior. "Because taking life unnecessarily is wrong." The Korthak leader laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Wrong? You are weak. That is why your species dies while ours conquers. We understand the truth, only the strong deserve to survive. And yet here you are, defeated by people you call weak," Jinwoo pointed out. The laughter stopped. The Korthak stared at Jinwoo with something like respect. "You are not Villani. What are you?" "Human. And my people are coming to stop you." For the first time, Jinwoo saw fear in Korthak eyes. They reached human space a month later. The border, patrol ships that intercepted them were tiny compared to the Bright Current, but they moved with military precision that impressed the Villani. The human crews were professional and cautious, treating the alien vessel as a potential threat until Jinwoo could identify himself. "This is Lieutenant Commander Jinwoo Park, serial number 7749 Alpha Romeo," he broadcast on standard military frequencies. "I am aboard a refugee vessel from the Villani species, requesting immediate diplomatic contact with UEF headquarters." The response came quickly. Admiral Hyejin Cho herself contacted them within hours, her image appearing on the Bright Current's main screen. She was a stern woman with graying hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. "Commander Park, you were listed as killed in action 3 months ago. Where have you been?" "It's a long story, Admiral, but the short version is that these people saved my life and now they need our help. The species that destroyed the UES Hanseong is called the Korthak Empire, and they're heading our way." Admiral Cho's expression darkened. "We've lost contact with 3 outer colonies in the past month. No distress signals, no survivors. Just empty space where thriving worlds used to be." "That's them," Jinwoo confirmed. "They're systematic, efficient, and completely without mercy. But they can be beaten. The Villani have technology that could give us a real advantage." Over the following days, human and Villani representatives met aboard the Bright Current. The discussions were complex, involving everything from technology transfer to refugee settlement to military cooperation. Some human officials wanted to simply take what they needed and leave the Villani to their fate. Others argued for a true alliance. The breakthrough came when young analyst Yongsoo Kim presented his tactical assessment. "The Korthak are used to fighting primitive species or pacifist ones like the Villani," he explained. "They've never faced an enemy that could match their technology and exceed their aggression. A combined human-Villani force could catch them completely off guard." Admiral Cho studied the battle plans that Yongsoo had developed. "This could work," she said finally, "but it would require the Villani to fully commit to military action. Are your people ready for that?" Captain Ilthan looked older than his years as he considered the question. Around him, his crew waited for an answer that would define their species' future. "My people chose peace once," he said slowly. "Now we must choose survival. Yes, Admiral. We are ready to fight." The meeting room at UEF headquarters buzzed with tension. Admiral Hyejin Cho sat at the head of a long table, surrounded by the highest-ranking military officers and government officials in human space. Holographic displays showed star maps with red zones marking Korthak advances and yellow areas indicating missing colonies. "The situation is worse than we initially thought," reported General Sunwoo Lee, head of military intelligence. "We've confirmed the loss of 7 outer colonies. No survivors, no infrastructure left behind. The Korthak strip planets completely bare before moving on." Minister Da-hyun Choi, the civilian representative from Earth's government, leaned forward in her chair. "What about evacuation efforts? Surely we can save some of our people?" "The attacks happened too fast," Admiral Cho replied grimly. "By the time we know a colony is under threat, it's already gone. The Korthak move faster than our communication networks." Jinwoo stood near one of the windows, watching military ships patrol the space around the station. Beside him, Zayla observed the human preparations with fascination and growing concern. The past week had shown her how quickly humans could shift from peaceful diplomacy to military readiness. "The Volani technology could change everything," said Dr. Minho Park, the head of the UEF's research division. "Their shield systems are generations ahead of ours. Their sensors can detect ships from incredible distances. With proper integration, we could build defenses that would stop any Korthak advance." "How long would that take?" asked Admiral Cho. "Years, maybe decades. We'd need to completely rebuild our entire fleet." Minister Choi shook her head. "We don't have years. At their current rate of expansion, the Korthak will reach our core systems within 6 months." The room fell silent as the reality of their situation sank in. Earth's military was powerful by human standards, but compared to the force that had swept through Volani space and destroyed dozens of worlds, it seemed pitifully small. "There is another option," said Young-Soo Kim, the young analyst who had proposed the joint military operation. "We don't need to rebuild our entire fleet. We just need to combine our existing forces with Volani ships and technology." "Explain," Admiral Cho ordered. Young-Soo activated a holographic display showing ship formations and battle scenarios. "The Korthak have one major weakness: they're overconfident. They've been winning for so long that they don't expect real resistance. Combined force could use human tactics and Volani technology to hit them where they're not prepared." "What kind of tactic?" asked General Lee. "Fast strikes, guerrilla warfare, psychological operations. Everything that's made humanity successful in asymmetric conflicts. The Korthak fight like a traditional empire. They expect their enemies to either surrender or meet them in direct battle. They won't know how to respond to human unpredictability." Minister Choi looked skeptical. "You're talking about starting a war with a species that has destroyed entire civilizations. Are we really prepared for that kind of commitment?" "We're already at war," Jinwoo said, speaking for the first time since the meeting began. "The Korthak made that decision when they started killing our colonists. The only question is whether we fight back or wait to die." Admiral Cho turned to study him. "You've faced them in combat, Commander. What's your assessment?" "They're dangerous, but not invincible. They rely on fear and overwhelming force. When that doesn't work, they struggle to adapt. The Volani proved that ships can be modified for combat effectiveness. With proper coordination, we could hurt them badly." "And the cost?" Minister Choi asked quietly. The room grew quiet again. Everyone knew that war with the Korthak would mean massive casualties. Human and Volani lives would be lost by the thousands, maybe millions. "The cost of fighting is high," Captain Ilthan said, speaking from his position at the far end of the table. "But the cost of not fighting is extinction. My people learned this lesson too late. Yours still has time to choose." Over the following days, the debate continued in smaller groups and private meetings. Military officers argued for immediate action, while civilian leaders worried about the risks. Scientists pushed for more time to study Volani technology, while intelligence experts warned that delay would only make the Korthak stronger. Jinwoo spent most of his time working with technical teams, helping them understand how Volani systems could be integrated with human equipment. The process was challenging. The two technologies were based on completely different principles. Human machines used metal and electronics, while Volani systems grew from living crystal and organic computers. But slowly, they made progress. Human weapons became more accurate when guided by Volani sensors. Volani shields became stronger when powered by human fusion reactors. The combination of human pragmatism and Volani elegance created something new and powerful. The breakthrough came when Lieutenant Minji Han, a young engineer, successfully modified a human torpedo to carry a Volani energy core. The resulting weapon could punch through armor that would stop conventional explosives. "This changes everything," Dr. Park said as he studied the test results. "We can mass-produce these modifications. Every ship in the fleet could carry weapons, capable of hurting Korthak vessels. But even with improved weapons, Earth's military leaders knew they would need more ships and crew members to face the Korthak Empire. The enemy had hundreds of worlds under their control, with production capabilities that dwarfed human industry. "We need allies," Admiral Cho concluded during a strategic planning session. "Other species that have reason to hate the Korthak." "The problem is finding survivors," Young-soo pointed out. "The Korthak don't usually leave anyone alive to form alliances with." "There have to be others," Zayla said. "Species that escaped like we did, or civilizations that successfully resisted initial attacks. The galaxy is vast. The Korthak can't have conquered everyone." This led to a new plan. While human shipyards worked frantically to modify vessels with Volani technology, scouting missions would search for other survivors. If they could build a coalition of species that had all suffered under Korthak aggression, the balance of power might shift. The first joint human Volani patrol ships launched 2 weeks later. They were strange-looking vessels, combining the angular efficiency of human design with the flowing curves of Volani architecture. But the crews that flew them were even more remarkable. Humans and Volani working side by side, learning each other's languages and customs while preparing for war. Jinwoo commanded one of these hybrid vessels, the UES VBC Unity. His crew included 15 humans and 10 Volani, all volunteers who believed in the mission. Zayla served as his cultural liaison and technical specialist, helping bridge the gap between two very different ways of thinking. Their first mission took them to the Outer Rim, where several human colonies had gone silent. What they found confirmed everyone's worst fears. The worlds were empty, stripped of all life and resources. But they also found something unexpected, wreckage from unknown ships that had tried to fight back. "These aren't human or Korthak," reported Ensign Taewon-yu, the Unity's sensor specialist. "The metal composition is completely different. Someone else was here during the attack." "Survivors from another species?" Zayla suggested. "Or refugees like us," Jinwoo said. "Either way, we need to find them." Following the wreckage trail led them to a hidden asteroid base where they discovered something that gave them hope. 3 different alien species had banded together in a desperate alliance against the Korthak. They were few in number and poorly equipped, but they had managed to rescue some civilians from destroyed worlds. The aliens were as surprised to see humans and Volani working together as the crew of the Unity was to find them. But their languages of suffering and loss needed no translation. All of them had watched their homeworlds burn. All of them had lost family and friends to Korthak brutality. Within hours, representatives from 5 species were planning joint operations against their common enemy. The alliance was fragile and uncertain, but it was a beginning. When news reached Earth, the political debate finally ended. Admiral Cho received authorization to launch Operation Homecoming, a massive joint military campaign designed to push back against Korthak expansion and rescue any survivors they could find. The orders came down through military channels across human space. All available ships were to be modified with Volani technology and prepared for extended combat operations. Civilian facilities would be converted to military production. Earth itself would become a fortress world. ready to defend humanity's birthplace if all else failed. But first, they would carry the fight to the enemy. For the first time since the Korthak expansion began, an entire civilization was preparing to hit back. The combined fleet assembled at Waypoint Station looked like nothing the galaxy had ever seen before. 200 human warships floated alongside 50 Villani vessels, their different designs creating a strange but beautiful pattern against the stars. Smaller ships from 3 other allied species added to the mix, creating a truly multi-species armada. Admiral Yejin Cho stood on the bridge of her flagship, the UES Incheon, watching the final preparations. The past month had been a whirlwind of activity as ships were modified, crews were trained, and battle plans were refined. Now finally they were ready to take the fight to the Korthak Empire. "Fleet status report," she ordered. "All ships report ready for combat operations," replied Captain Kang Min-seo, her chief of staff. "Integration protocols are active, and all vessels are linked through the Villani communication network." The communication system was one of their greatest advantages. Villani technology allowed instant coordination across vast distances, something the Korthak had never faced before. Their enemies were used to fighting isolated battles against confused defenders. This time they would face a unified force that could adapt and respond in real time. Jinwoo's ship, the Unity, had been assigned to the advance squadron. His mixed crew had become a model for human-Villani cooperation, and other ships were following their example. But the cultural integration hadn't been easy for anyone. In the Unity's briefing room, Jinwoo watched his officers prepare for their first major engagement. Lieutenant Sarah Kim, his human tactical officer, studied targeting data with mathematical precision. Beside her, Villani engineer Novik examined the same information with intuitive understanding that came from his species' natural connection to their technology. "The Corvin system has 3 planets," Sarah reported. "Intelligence suggests the Korthak are using the second world as a processing center for captured Villani civilians." Zayla's light dimmed at the mention of her people being processed. Everyone knew what that meant. The Korthak used biological materials from other species to enhance their own warriors and ships. It was a fate worse than simple death. 15,000 Villani prisoners, Novik said quietly. "Maybe more. We have to save them." "We will," Jinwoo promised. "But we need to be smart about it. The Korthak have 40 ships defending that system, including at least 3 heavy cruisers. If we charge in recklessly, we'll lose the fleet and accomplish nothing." The battle plan they had developed was complex, using the unique capabilities of each species in the alliance. Human ships would provide the main assault force, using their superior firepower and aggressive tactics. Villani vessels would handle electronic warfare and precision strikes, their advanced sensors allowing them to target critical systems on enemy ships. The smaller allied species would conduct rescue operations, their fast ships perfect for evacuating prisoners under fire. "Remember," Jinwoo told his crew, "we're not just fighting for territory or revenge. We're fighting to prove that different species can work together to defend the innocent. Every decision we make reflects on that ideal." The jump to the Corvin system took 6 hours. When the fleet emerged from hyperspace, they found exactly what intelligence had predicted: a heavily defended Korthak stronghold with massive industrial facilities on the second planet's surface. But they also found something unexpected. 3 additional Korthak fleets had arrived, bringing the total enemy force to over 100 ships. The aliens had been waiting for them. "It's a trap," Captain Seo reported from the Incheon's bridge. "They knew we were coming." Admiral Cho studied the tactical display, her expression grim but determined. Perhaps they're just as committed to this battle as we are. Either way, we're here now. All ships, prepare for combat." The Korthak fleet moved first, their dark ships spreading out in a traditional battle formation designed to overwhelm opponents through sheer firepower. Their weapons blazed across space in coordinated volleys, filling the void with deadly energy. But the Allied fleet didn't respond the way the Korthak expected. Instead of meeting them head-on, the ships scattered into smaller groups, each one moving with apparent randomness. To Korthak commanders trained in formal military doctrine, it looked like chaos. It wasn't chaos. It was human tactical thinking combined with Volani precision. Each group had specific objectives and they moved according to a plan that adapted constantly as conditions changed. Jinwoo led his squadron toward the planet's orbital shipyards, where long-range sensors detected Volani life signs. The Unity and 4 other ships dove through layers of defensive fire, their modified shields deflecting most of the incoming damage. "Target the docking bays first," he ordered. "We need to prevent them from moving the prisoners." The Unity's weapons, upgraded with Volani energy cores, punched through the shipyard's armor like it was paper. Explosions rippled across the structure as critical systems failed. But the Korthak defenders weren't helpless. They launched fighters and bombers in waves, trying to overwhelm the small rescue force. That's when the Volani members of Jinwoo's crew proved their worth. Novik linked directly with the ship's sensors, his crystalline consciousness merging with the technology in ways humans couldn't match. He tracked dozens of enemy fighters simultaneously, feeding targeting data to the ship's defensive systems with superhuman accuracy. "I count 37 enemy fighters," he reported. Vector solutions computed and loaded. The Unity's point defense, guns fired in perfect synchronization, each shot guided by Volani precision and human determination. Enemy fighters exploded like fireworks as the rescue force fought its way toward the prison facilities. Meanwhile, Admiral Cho commanded the main battle from her flagship. The Korthak capital ships were formidable opponents, each one larger and more heavily armed than anything in the human fleet. But size wasn't everything in space combat. "Focus fire on their sensor arrays," she ordered. "Blind them first, then hit their weapons." Human ships swarmed around the massive Korthak vessels, like angry wasps too small and fast to be easily targeted. Their modified weapons found weak points in enemy armor, guided by Volani sensors that could detect structural flaws from across the system. One by one, the Korthak ships began to suffer damage. Their overwhelming firepower meant nothing if they couldn't aim properly, and their traditional tactics failed against enemies who refused to fight fair. But the battle wasn't one-sided. Human ships were dying too, their crews making ultimate sacrifices to protect their alien allies. The destroyer UES Mokpo took a direct hit from a Korthak heavy cruiser, its hull breaking apart in a brilliant flash. 23 human and Volani crew members died together, their final act being to ram their crippled ship into an enemy vessel. On the planet's surface, ground teams fought desperately to reach the prison compounds. Captain Ilthan led a mixed force of human Marines and Volani volunteers, his peaceful people learning the harsh realities of combat operations. "The main facility is heavily guarded," reported Sergeant Junho Park over the communication network. "We need air support to break through." "Negative," Admiral Cho replied from orbit. "All combat aircraft are engaged with enemy fighters. You'll have to find another way." Ilthan made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. "Prepare demolition charges. We'll collapse the outer wall and storm the facility directly." "Sir, that could kill prisoners," Sergeant Park warned. "More will die if we don't act quickly. Sometimes mercy requires hard choices." The explosion that followed created a breach large enough for the rescue teams to enter. Inside, they found horrors that tested even human resolve. Volani prisoners being surgically modified for Korthak experiments, their crystal forms twisted into grotesque shapes. But they also found hope. Thousands of prisoners were still intact, waiting in holding cells for processing that would never come. The rescue operation saved 15,000 Volani civilians, along with survivors from 4 other species. The space battle continued for 8 hours. When it finally ended, both sides had paid a terrible price. 22 human ships were destroyed or crippled beyond repair. The Volani lost 7 vessels, including 2 of their most advanced explorers. The smaller allied species suffered proportional losses, but the Korthak lost much more. 47 of their ships were destroyed, including 2 of the heavy cruisers that served as the backbone of their fleet. More importantly, they had lost their sense of invincibility. For the first time in their expansion, they had been beaten in open battle. As the combined fleet regrouped and tended to its wounded, reports came in from across the sector. The victory at Corvin had inspired other resistance groups. 3 more species had declared their intention to join the alliance, and Korthak advances had slowed as they diverted ships to defend their existing territory. But perhaps the most significant change was in the relationships between the allied species themselves. Humans and Villani, who had fought side by side, now understood each other in ways that no amount of diplomacy could have achieved. They had shared fear, loss, and triumph. They had become something new, not human or Villani, but something greater than either species alone. Jinwoo stood in the Unity's medical bay, watching human and Villani doctors work together to save wounded crew members. The sight gave him hope for the future even as he mourned the friends they had lost.